After the Great Recession of 2008, this is possibly the biggest crisis that businesses all across the globe are facing. While every business is stress testing their P&L, doing scenario planning, and figuring out a way to normalize their operations, marketers are still trying to find the best way to navigate their brands through this coronavirus crisis. I am Neeraj Sancheti, co founder and CEO of Kreativ Street. And with this and many more upcoming sessions with leading marketeers across the country, we are trying to find the answer to how brands should navigate during this time of coronavirus crisis. Today we have with us Smita Murarka. She's the Vice President Marketing at Duroflex, one of the leading mattress brand in the country. And prior to Duroflex, Smita was the marketing head at Amante, a subsidiary of MAS Holdings, and she played a key role in driving the brand to 5x growth in the turnover in just 4 years. And apart from those numbers, there are a lot of other things that you look at when you look at Amante. Those were done and those were driven by Smita prior to starting with Duroflex. Before Duroflex, she also had successful stints at Lifestyle International and Landmark Group. So, first of all, thank you so much, Smita, for agreeing to be a part of this conversation. So, how are you?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me over. Yeah, I'm perfectly all right. Trying to cope with COVID like all of us. Incidentally, today a lot of market has opened, so I think businesses should get some relief. So look forward to better times.
Yeah. So I think this is the first conversation that I'm having as a part of this series where we have some light at the end of the tunnel. As you said, that few markets are just starting to open up. So we'll still have to see where it goes. But straight away into my first question, Smita. So is this the first crisis situation that you're facing in your career, or have you experienced anything in the past as well?
I think that's a great question, and that's something that I keep telling my team also. When who are much younger and they look at this situation with a lot of anxiety. I think some of us who've had over 15 years of experience have definitely seen the 2008 recession, which was the largest global recession in recent times. I was in retail industry working with Landmark Group. I had been handed over just a month before the recession, a whole new responsibility. So being a marketer, I was handed over to head bringing Splash, which is the fashion format of Landmark Group in the Middle East, to India. Complete role, and I was extremely young. Product was not something that I had done as a role before. So before the recession, it seemed really exciting, and I had taken it on. But I got into the crisis soon after that. So it was for me a very dual sort of a thing: learning on the go, getting interacting with a global team, which was not happening earlier. Also getting a whole new format. Uh, so it was a lot of crisis management that I learned, and those 3 years are my fondest memories and probably my strongest learning in my career. Cut to now. So I joined Duroflex in February, just a month before recession. I mean, before COVID. And it seems like there's a dual task here as well, because I've spent about 16 years in fashion and lifestyle. And FMCD and categories such as mattresses is completely new to me. So understanding the category as well as handling COVID is a dual task, and I think to all those marketers out there who've been in their companies for long enough or categories for long enough, you have people like me who are having dual challenges. So I think they should just be happy about knowing what they're doing.
So I think Smita, that's a great point. The whole background with which we started this series was to help the young marketeers to take learnings from marketeers like yourself who have seen crisis situation in the past. And I think the similarity is not just seeing those crisis situation, but being there just a month before. As you said, that even during the 2008 recession, you joined just a month before, and I think similarly here at Duroflex. So moving on, Smita, you've seen the crisis situation in the past, right? And we know it's a pandemic situation right now as well.
how is this impacting the overall economy and cut to your specific industry, the mattress industry? How's the impact, and what's your view on how and where it will go from here on?
See, firstly, while we have experiences of 2008, this is not just an economic recession. This is the humanitarian crisis, a pandemic. It's quite uncertain and it's a very large scale global level, right? So there's no escaping it. I think definitely businesses will be affected. This year, we've lost about 3 months projected, and we don't know how far it goes. So I think as marketers, we should be very cognizant of this reality and, not live in some other aspirational world. We should, as marketers, support the business from a consumer in point of view. As far as our category goes, it is not an essential category like food and staple, also like medicines and health, which have already seen an upswing. It is to an extent discretionary. Having said that, we feel after the essential category, this could be one of the first categories that bounces back quickly because consumers have spent a lot of time at home. Most of them have small spaces, so they've spent a lot more time on their beds.
Right.
They've experienced if they have a bad product, they've experienced what it's like, to have a bad product because they're finally not having any other excuse to give that, I've not had a good night's sleep because of the traffic, because of stress, because of being out. So none of those factors are there. So they genuinely are able to judge the product they have a lot better. And if it's a great product, similarly, they know that it was worth it, the investment. So we have kept these kind of factors in mind in a positive way to say that how can we connect with our consumers and fuel the category growth. Also, from a communication point of view, we are propagating the whole point of sleeping. So sleep is a factor that really builds immunity. Right. Apart from health and fitness, is one of the pillars of having good health. And that's something that's organic to our business. So in fact, our entire communication during COVID has been to talk to consumers about sleeping better and share that knowledge. So in that sense, I think after essential, it is a very organic category which consumers would hear brands a lot more logically.
Great point, Smita. Before we got into this conversation, obviously I was doing some research on the category as well and what Duroflex was up to in terms of marketing. And it was so good and refreshing to see a brand talking genuinely about something that impacts and that helps the consumers in the current scenario. Without taking names, there are a lot of brands who have just pivoted from talking about something else as the value proposition from the brand to immunity, for example, where we don't even know if there is any sort of product truth in whatever is being communicated. So I think given all that and given the opportunistic behavior of some of the brands in the current times, it was so good to see Duroflex talking about sleep, and there is so much of truth behind the role of sleep in the overall immunity for the consumers. So I think great work on that front, Smita.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very important for us, to see what business we are in. And since we were in the right business, as I said, the minute COVID became a reality in India, our first campaign was to educate consumers on how sleep impacts immunity. And that was not something that was not organic to our business. Our core purpose is to do that, even continued beyond COVID times. So it just made sense for us to go out there and keep doing that a lot more. But I think if you're in a business which has absolutely no relevance right now, it's best to conserve cash. It's best to look inwards how marketers can support businesses, play larger roles, and use that time to either upgrade, rescale, or participate internally. Don't look at yourself as only a cash spending unit which is separated from business. So I think it's important for marketers to make that decision, not really look at brands and say, okay, you know what, everybody's communicating, let me also just add to it. because basic hygiene knowledge and all is happening at various platforms. So it's not necessary for a brand not related to it to jump onto it. So yeah, that would be my advice, to be genuine and authentic. And as marketers, it's very important to play the bridge between your business in a transaction sense and as genuine brand connect and how it helps consumers. So we are the balance, as a department or as a function, that can really find that fine balance of timing and content of transactional communication versus brand connect. And this was surely not a time for anybody to do a very transactional communication.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Totally agree with that, Smita. And you're on your point of conserving cash. I'm sure, and all of us are aware of it, that marketing budgets are getting slashed across businesses. There are only few specific industries that are still doing good, and they are even growing. Now, when it comes to slashed budgets, and as you mentioned that this is a time for marketers to also look inward and help the overall business on things beyond being just transactional. So, with the reduced budgets, what are the few specific areas that you would suggest brands to focus on when it comes to the marketing function?
Yeah, firstly, I think marketers continue to live in this sense of pride of the kind of budgets they handle, and they would want to attach themselves at that scale. I've never done that. I've handled marketing for big brands like Lifestyle, where the budgets were quite high in the retail space, to lingerie, where it started from zero. We started from scratch and built it upwards, and today it's a leading lingerie brand. And a lot of credit would go to the brand building efforts. So I think firstly, marketers should come out of this whole myth that budgets is what defines them as good marketers. In fact, I would say the reverse. I think the best ideas and the best marketing, especially in today's time where social media, digital, can really, if it's good effort, it can make things viral quite soon organically. So I think the whole proposition and the mindset of low budgets or budgets getting slashed should come out, because ultimately sales is also getting affected. So it's not that it's in individual capacity; it's linked to sales. So that's the first point that I want to make. Come out of your mindset and don't look at numbers without any relevance. It's the best time for us to get creative and really put our worth out there. The second is look at your business purely from consumer point of view, from what's happening around. How's the consumer interacting? Some of the quick decisions that we were able to make was purely because of seeing quickly enough how we are feeling as consumers and how our immediate circle is. And that's really what consumers are. They are not some alien sitting out there. We are all consumers, right? So in your target group, identify the circle you're within and just map some behavior. Today and going forward, the power of one is going to become more and more important, where a single consumer will really drive a lot of word of mouth purchase, a lot of influence, referrals. So that even that one consumer is going to be important, and therefore mass spends might not be required. There's a lot of new ways of interacting with them, whether it's conversational commerce, something that's becoming a more and more used term recently, where we are interacting with them through dark social mediums. So there's a lot of new innovative ways to reach out the consumer, which might not even require any spends, right? Today, technology has made everything possible. So I think we just need to be open-minded enough, need to understand what business we are in, what is the consumer behavior, and bridge that gap. And that could happen without spends too.
Right. Interesting. So, Smita, I think in your career you have dealt with a lot of brands which had the millennials as the key target group. I think even at Amante, that was the that was the key TG that you were going after. And you have also worked and managed businesses which has considerable retail touch point as well. So, what do you think in the coming times, the post-corona period, the new normal, will the millennials have a new or never before seen behavior when it comes to retail?
Most definitely. I think everybody is saying that this is the new normal, at least if not forever, in certain time period and certain critical behavior changes. Um, Now, how does it impact the millennials in India versus the global millennials? Maybe that's a point of differentiation. I think as a country, we were just getting used to consumerism. We were just getting used to fulfilling our desires. So in that sense, it might bounce back a lot faster than probably global scenario, but then that's anybody's guess. We have to wait and watch.
Hmm.
But definitely there will be some critical changes. I think if I can speak outside my category, if you see Google search trends, everybody's searching about how to cook, DIY. For a generation that was used to ordering every meal from outside and not even having a gas stove, I think a lot of that has changed. So definitely they're getting used to certain amounts of coming back to basics and appreciating it, something that their parents may have been telling, but there was not much importance placed to it. So those awareness levels have definitely gone up. But I think ultimately, I think it's a cycle. You do come back to roots. The Gen Z was already talking about back to roots and sustainability, and they were already in that zone. And millennials would have now, started to appreciate a lot more things.
Yeah.
Even things like travel, work from home. I mean, for a generation that travel was so easy, and all of us spoke about how travel is something we love, and
Yeah.
that's what we do with most of our earnings. I think all that is definitely going to stop for some time or postpone. So yeah, in that sense, we might spend if we still have the jobs. I
Hmm.
think we might spend a little close to before, but in the areas of what we spend that will change. We would look at doing up our houses a lot better, so that we can work out of our homes better.
Yeah.
Maybe kitchen essentials will increase a lot more. As I said, mattresses and places where you find comfort in your house, the quality of purchases would go up. So
Right.
I think, yeah, that would change. But I strongly believe in the Indian scenario, the amount of purchases might not reduce as much as the
The
global world,
distribution of those.
because the distribution will surely change.
Right.
Because we were already a economy with had so much disparity.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, that hopefully, I mean, that's the positive me speaking, that might not get impacted too much
Yeah.
in the long run.
Yeah. So I think Smita, you talked about consumers going back to the basics, and that we are already seeing in the current lockdown situation. And I firmly believe that even for marketeers, it will be the time to go back to the basics. To relook at what the behavior of their target group is, sort of getting into deeper conversation, deeper relationship with your existing consumers, and driving that knowledge to the product development side of the business. I think that will be a very core role of marketers going forward.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be back to basics, questioning what is your role as a marketer in the business, and as I said, how can you bridge the gap between the consumer and the business in the shortest, fastest, easiest way possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, Smita, I think as marketers, we also, I think in last few years, a lot of marketers used to look at what we call vanity matrices. That we don't know whether it will actually, or whether it is actually impacting your business, the growth of your business. Uh, and I think even at that side of things, the kind of matrices that marketers look at, that will also need to change. Uh, uh, and I would love to know what your point of view is on that specific thing.
So again, I think for categories such as probably e-health, essentials, some of those metrics might stay, because right now the awareness they can build is at an all-time high, right? It's on the upswing. So a lot of it depends on the category that you're in. I think for most of the other categories, it would surely need to make a lot of ROI impact, because cash is going to be crunched The questions are going to be a lot more on the efficacy of it. I think we ourselves need to be a lot more responsible about the kind of money we spend. I mean, earlier if you talk about CPMs, views, native advertising, all those things, while it may continue, it definitely needs to be shifted to a lot more ROI-driven metrics. That how does it impact my final purchase? If that entire funnel can be tracked, and there's logic behind it, then definitely it makes sense.
Right.
Else, it's better to put out content, continue putting it at a small scale. Not worry about the views and pushing that content. But if it's organic enough, I mean, if it's great content for the times, there's high chances of it people reading on their own because they are searching for content which makes a difference in their lives right now.
Yeah.
So look at making content more as putting out there and not pushing it too much, not investing on that, but still having the right content out there if it makes sense in these times. And the second is all other efforts should be clearly ROI driven and should be tracked to the final, business efficacy of it.
Right, right. So you touched upon content, Smita, and you also spoke about the communication aspect of it a while ago. So I wanted to understand from you that a lot of people are talking about being empathetic to your consumers at this point of time, and even on the content front, that what is it that you should put out as a brand. Now, what I have been observing is that a lot of brands have been talking about the same, what I call Me Too content. Not the Me Too what it originally started with, but essentially talking about the same stuff around Corona, myths, so on and so forth, right? Now, that for a consumer, it becomes a fatigue, beyond a certain point. How much will you read about it? You already have all of this flooded on your WhatsApp group, and then again on your Facebook. Then again, if you look at the brand that you're following, you're again hearing the same thing. So what's your suggestion specifically on the content marketing front, and how should brands go about that in the current times?
Absolutely. I think, even for me as a consumer, I think there's so much fatigue. Even, if we speak about webinars, I think the reason why I agreed for this one was because the questions were quite new and helpful to finally people who are using it. But then, even if you take the example of webinars today, people are just doing it mindlessly, and the same thing is getting repeated, which is leading to a lot of corporate fatigue.
Right.
So, similarly, in the consumer world, I think. Firstly, the timing of it, the continuity of it, knowing when to start, when to stop, and what is the exact content? How is it helping in these times? We spoke about two things. One is right now we should not look at anything transactionally, and the other is if you're in the business that makes the difference, then go ahead and talk about it. So if I can give you an example on how we did it, a we already knew, we had the knowledge and the content to say how sleep builds immunity. And we reacted at it very quickly, where we had a TV campaign backed by a digital campaign where we spoke about the quick tips and reasons why sleep builds immunity, right? Now, this is something that was very required. We didn't talk about hand washing. We didn't talk about, how to wear a mask. We didn't do those things because that was not something that was true to our business and the government. And there were large, better content players out there who were doing it, right? So we just spoke about how it is sleep is a knowledge that we have and decided to share it. Now, that obviously got picked up as a must do through a wide, whether it was competition, whether it was influencers. Of course, that's organically something that people started talking about because it was real, it was important conversation. So while we held on to that, we also moved into connecting with consumers at an emotional level. The next set of campaign was a video which was Stay In, Stay Home that we released, which connected with our consumers emotionally. And we backed it up by getting a lot of influencers on our Instagram platform live to talk about health and fitness and to do certain activities. This was done much before, again, I think right now the whole live fatigue is happening. So this was done much before all that started happening. Then we moved on to last week. We started yoga nidra sessions just before people go to sleep, which was around 10:30 p.m. Where we partnered with Dozy, which is a contactless health monitor, and they have the yoga nidra sessions. So we had those sessions on our YouTube platform, spoke about how to meditate and have better sleep, because right now consumers are facing a lot of anxiety issues. Tomorrow is becoming even more uncertain.
Right.
So I think in a nutshell, firstly, the timing is very important. You cannot talk about something repeatedly if it has already been out there. If 100 people have already spoken about it, or 100 brands have already done ads around it, and being 101 really doesn't make sense. So the timing of it is really critical if you need to be heard, and especially if you need to be perceived as a thought leader. B, the content. It should be authentic to what you're in. If you start to talk about things which are general knowledge, today there are a lot of other avenues to get it, and we don't need a brand to share that anymore. So I think these 2 points are very critical, and that's how we kind of have continued our efforts in these times, keeping a checklist of these 2 things. And we've just not gone beyond that because that's not our business and not our knowledge expertise.
No, I think it's extremely helpful, Smita, and I think that's the key that a lot of brands, a lot of marketers are missing today. Just because of the just because of the rush to be the first, people are talking about anything which is not even relevant to your category or your business. And I think what Duroflex has done to be very limited to the one thing that they're good at, which is about their knowledge of sleep. I think that is something that other brands, other marketers should also take a cue from. So thank you for sharing that specific example, Smita. So now, Smita, I'll try to wrap this conversation and then get into our final a bit more exciting part, which is the rapid fire a set of questions that we have. So my last question from you is, if you have to summarize this entire conversation and give out 3 or 4 specific pointers to the marketeers for today's time, and also now that hopefully we are approaching the new normal, although I don't know if any one of us know what it is going to be. But again, what are the 3-4 things that marketers should be keeping in mind?
Yeah, I think from my experience, the thought that comes to my mind is A, look at yourself for the long run as a marketer and your business as a long run. So don't try to do anything tactically. You are in your building block of your career. Make sure that what you do is in interest of your career long term, in terms of learning, in terms of doing the right things for your consumer, and also for the business. So even if there are suggestions which are otherwise, of course, try your best to give proper suggestions and be really true to what a consumer needs. I think at the end of it, I'm a strong believer in being rightist, however difficult it is. So try as much to do that, and with that, then you will not make fake promises to your consumers and sell something which is not that you're best at. So that's the first one. Be righteous still in all times. The second one would be use this time to get creative, to upskill yourself, and also upskill the business, make technology advancements in the business, things that probably ideas you would have. I hear a lot of my team members or otherwise also saying that, this idea I've shared, but nothing is happening. It's simply because there was a lot of other priorities that the business had earlier. And if you can make those shelved ideas which are important happen, this is a good time to do it. Similarly for yourselves, upskill or reskill, looking at the future. Use this time more effectively, and be as close as you can to the actual financial stability to the business. Don't alienate yourself from it, because at the end of it, none of this can happen if the company is not able to survive, right?
Yeah.
So be very close to the cash reality, even for yourself. And there's little out of just marketing context, but know your financial stability. in the next 1 year at least, and plan for that so that you are not facing too much of the stress. So yeah, these are the three quick points. Of course, apart from being, I know it's difficult, but a realistic, cautious optimism is required, where you know what the future holds. But at the same time, you know the reality is. So a little bit of cautious optimism is the kind of mood that I'd like everyone to adopt.
Oh, great response to that, Smita. And I think realistic, cautious optimism will be my pick as a highlight of this conversation. So thank you, Smita. I think those were great responses. I think those are very insightful and can be really taken as key advices by young marketers out there. So quickly, we will now have a few questions, and you have to respond to them as quickly as you can because it's a rapid fire.
Try.
So I'll start with that. So the first one, Smita, between new customer acquisition versus building relationship with your existing customer in the current times, what's your pick?
I think both. You know, the way to do it is different. For a category like ours, relationship is more of after sale because a repeat purchase takes about 6 to 7 years, unlike fashion. So definitely make sure we make good products and keep that after sale communication alive, or added cross selling. But reaching out to a larger base is more important because if you're making good products, and as I said, this is a category which probably consumers are realizing more for going into better products and a better brand. So new consumers are also equally important. So right now for us, it's both in different ways.
Okay. Okay. In the current times, most relevant advertising medium.
Social media, for sure. People are onto it. Age groups and consumers who didn't know how to use Instagram and Facebook have gotten onto it. Live sessions are becoming more and more pronounced. So I think you can't ignore social media at all right now, and of course digital overall. Um, Opportunities of mass media communication are really limited and reduced right now. Yeah.
Okay. If given an opportunity, which brand would you like to manage during this time of crisis? Obviously, apart from your existing brand.
I'm not sure if I'd say I like to manage, but it'll be interesting to be part of a travel company. Again, while I say this, keeping the economics of this aside, because personally, I know a lot of people have lost their jobs in this industry, and I wouldn't want to be in that shoes. But other than that, probably hospitality and travel, you'd really need a lot of intelligence, and how do you pass this and patience and change consumer behavior. So one of the leading, maybe if I have to see in Indian context, maybe like something like Taj Hotels, probably. It'd be interesting to see how they survive this or change their business model to some extent and market that.
That's a bold response, Smita, to pick one of the travel and hospitality. So which brand would you not want to manage during this time of crisis?
I think the answer is similar, but more than hospitality, an airline for sure. Something like an Air India or any of the airlines I think we should all keep away from.
Okay. We have all been into too many webinars, work from home. What's your most interesting work from home hack that you think keeps you super productive?
I think managing calendar. For me to see a organized calendar beforehand gives me a lot of patience versus getting calls, getting calls without any schedule. So having a scheduled calendar and making sure that's in place and visible to your team members and so I'm part of XCOM, the community. That for me gives me a lot of peace. Secondly, having a space which is organized, things around and a sense of timing. So to make sure when you start and kind of when you end, I think these few tips is something that's keeping me grounded. It still makes me feel that I'm in an organized setup and my office timings are kind of organized. So yeah, these are the few tips. It's difficult to manage, of course. So it's not something that doesn't get extended. But I think organized calendar would be my number one pick.
Okay, and the weirdest thing that has happened over a video call?
Not to me, thankfully. But yeah, we've been seeing a lot of memes. I think in our network, people who have kids probably, when the call goes on mute. I think to have a lot of kid noise. I don't have kids, so for me that's something that's entertaining, and it's good fun to have all these things in between actually. Than to just look at boxes and communicate. So I think a lot of background noise is something that keeps us entertained, right from kids to I think the mixer and whatnot.
Great. Okay, so the final question, Smita, your one-liner message for all the marketers.
Marketing is not dead. It's not going anywhere. It's the only connect between a business and a brand, and no business should forget that. So I think if you are able to keep that relevance, it is the most exciting thing to do. So yeah, reinvent yourself, and like everything else, this would pass. This is experience. This is what experience is all about. And you look back and just like me, after a few years, talk about this to the younger audience. So yeah, let's get past this.
Thank you so much, Smita. This was super insightful.